In this multi-part series, I'm going to build a clock kit. This is a QRP Labs clock kit, and that's one part of the construction project. The clock is going to be disciplined by a GPS generated signal. This is also a QRP kit. And the third part of the kit, and if there is a manual, I can't find it. So this is the enclosure. That's probably the last thing we should be looking at. This came from China, directly from China. It's a two-piece extruded aluminum housing with two aluminum plates, one for the front and one for the back. And the housing is you can see how big this clock kit is. And it will end up being this high. There are some components, some hardware, two switches, two push buttons, 4 feet, and a BNC connector. This box contains the other two parts, the clock kit and the GPS receiver kit. It actually came from Turkey. It was in a Turkish Post box. Looks like one or two tear off, I don't know, indicator it arrived in certain places. You can see the shipping. It cost 2,875 kroners. And according to the CN22 custom declaration, this value of this is $18. So this is apparently the GPS kit. Has one circuit board, and this is the clock kit, and I believe it has one circuit board plus a LCD module. So it appears to be a two-line display with a backlight, and it's a 1602. Interesting little trademark. I'm not sure what that is. All of this is through hole components. The socket for the program chip. Kit does not come with a power supply. It takes a well-regulated 5-volt wall supply or bench supply. The solder I use, it's Alpha Metals, and It's 6337 and the diameter is 0.25 inches or 0.64 millimeters. I have a Hakko, or maybe it's a knockoff, I don't know, soldering iron. So according to the instructions, the first thing we do is install this socket. Alright, these sockets have a notch at one end and a notch on the circuit board. That is a notched on the silk screening. Make sure that the notched end of the socket is aligned with the notched end indicated on the silk screen. This is to be installed flat against the circuit board. I tend to hold it flat and bend two diagonally opposite pins over the circuit board. Then I'll solder those diagonally opposite pins. To do that, I'm going to now that socket is lifted a little tiny bit off the board. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to press very hard at all until the solder melts. And as soon as it melts, I press it down tight against the board. See? Press on it before the solder melts. You'll actually move the pin up through the plastic. We'll do that on each end until the socket is laying flat against the board. Now I've turned off the overhead lights, with the exception of this mark here and this mark here. Those are spotlights. And of course these holes are not used yet. These are the holes. And I'm going to look at every one of them. Okay, see these little holes? Little ones right here. And here's two. They are not used for components. So we're going to make sure that our solder doesn't bridge over into any one of these little holes. And this is the last pin, so I don't know how it looks on the camera, but believe me, it is soldered. These are the other ones. This seems to be all of the through-hole components. Now there's some jumpers, but all we've got is, I guess, turn around this way. This potentiometer, two push buttons, two capacitors, and the crystal. The switches don't fit flush. Their legs are pre-molded, pre-bent, and the same thing's true with the potentiometer. It doesn't fit flush. The legs are pre-bent to form standoffs. Instructions told me to adjust this completely clockwise. The next thing the instructions would have us do is put some jumpers in. Now, alternatively, there are some other things that can be done here. But I elected to install jumpers here and 2 jumpers here, see? Now you see the 2 holes above the jumpers, the 2 holes down below? They are actually connected to the respective jumper hole here, and the upper 2 holes are connected to these 2 jumper holes. So if we put a resistor in, they'll use that hole and this hole clear down here. And if we put a jumper in, we just use a little loop of wire and go in these holes adjacent. We'll do it here. Resistor would go in this hole and this hole. The next thing the instructions would have me do is install a header like this but longer down here, and then the female to that up here. As you can see, this is not flush. One of them's not going to be flush. And the instructions even have me leave a small gap. The instructions recommend the gap be here. I elected to have the length of the pins, the pins I'm going to solder, about the same length on each side. And I've installed the hardware. That allows me to get these square at right angles to the PCB board. Well, to both boards. The instructions would have you install the hardware later. So now we'll solder all 16 of these on both sides. Now make sure that the other reason for installing hardware before you solder them is to make sure you're soldering on the right faces. All of the rest of these components have been soldered on the opposite side. This header is soldered on this side. So make sure you put it together. Take a look at the fact that the LCD and these are on opposite sides. I've installed this header and the header the whole way along here. The only thing left are external connections. This is a 4-line connection to a GPS receiver. This is a power supply connection, which is going to be involving one of the switches. And the blue ones are for the external program and reset button. I need to plug this in. I'll reconnect this. Guess I'll have to do it the right way, which will be this way. So I'll connect it this way so you can see what I'm doing. I'll just push in there. That's it. Now I'm going to put these screws in back here. I imagine these will have to come out, and there's 4 screws, probably black, tapered or flathead screws for the connection to the front panel. It leaves plugging the microprocessor in. When you do that, make sure that the notched end of the socket is down here, And there is a notched end here. In any event, you can see the writing through here, and I assume they put the sticker on the same way. With that, I'm going to say we're going to wrap up. I'm going to end this session about the clock. So please give me a thumbs up. That's a button below the video display. And if you wish, comment. Thank you.